Hi there, data scamps and data champs. This is Richie. So today we're going to be talking about AI assistants with GPT. And the idea behind an assistant is that it can do more than just chatting. It can also perform tasks. So we're going to discuss I'll start again. We're going to discuss why you might want to do this, and then we're going to build one of these assistants ourselves. So we're going to primarily be working with the OpenAI API for this. So you can be writing some Python code, but we're also going to take a look at the point and click user interface on the OpenAI website. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons of each interface. Now, as Reese mentioned, if you want to follow along, you're going to have an OpenAI developer account with some credits on it. So go to platform.openai.com to register. I think the price is about 10 cents to run the whole thing. So I've spent $2 on it recently, but I've run it lots and lots of times. So I think it's probably somewhere around 10 cents. Either way, it's not super expensive. It shouldn't break the bank. So I suggest you go and sign up now while I'm talking, so you can be ready once we start coding. This is the point where I usually introduce the speaker. The speaker is me. So for those of you who've been to some of our webinars before, yeah, it's usually me hosting. Today I am being the instructor as well. If you don't know my face, then please do check out some of our previous webinars or go and listen to the Data Framed podcast. All right, with that, over to me. First of all, let us take a look at some slides. So what are we doing today? Before you begin, these are the links you need to go to. So platform.openai.com to register, and then there is a payment methods page. You should be able to get to these slides through the resources. So if you get to the payments page, you can add a credit card, and then in Data Lab, you're going to want to associate the API key from your account with an environment variable named this, OpenAI underscore API underscore key, some screenshots of Data Lab on how you add environment variables. All right, so what are we doing today? I found 10 recent papers on the archive free journal paper forum about artificial general intelligence. So artificial general intelligence is the idea that you have AI that is as good as or better than humans at doing tasks, but basically, because it's general, it's about doing all tasks. Like we have AI that is better than humans at doing specific tasks, but most AI, like a chess AI is better than, like the top chess AIs are better than the top human chess players, but the chess AI is also rubbish at doing anything that isn't chess. So the idea of general intelligence is an AI that can do pretty much anything. We're going to actually get into the definition of AGI a bit later on. Okay, so the goal for today is to create an OpenAI assistant based on the GPT-4o model. So the GPT-4o model is the latest model from OpenAI. So it's their most powerful model. And we're going to do a file search assistant. So basically, it's got access to the papers from archive that we're going to upload to it. And we're going to ask it some questions, and it's going to find the answers in those papers. And secondly, we're just going to talk a little bit about why AI assistants are useful and when you might want them. So ChatGPT is pretty amazing at generating text on almost anything. Quite often you want a tool that is a little bit more narrowly focused. So in a customer service example, one of the big use cases of generative AI is creating customer service chatbots. You don't want your customer service chatbot to start writing poetry to your users. It only has to generate much more narrow amount of text. You want it to be focused on one particular task, which in this case could be helping your customers. So this is why assistants are useful. You don't want them to do everything. You just want them to do specific things. In today's example, we want it to read PDF papers from archive and tell us about AGI, much narrower task. Now, it's maybe not types of assistants. Actually, I'm going to rephrase this. There's actually features of AI assistants. So there are three things that OpenAI promotes that its AI assistants can do. The first one is file search, which is basically you provide some documents and then it will answer questions about those documents. That's what we're going to focus on today. The second thing that AI assistants can do, the OpenAI ones anyway, can write and run Python code. So this is actually incredibly useful for a data science use case, since you spend a lot of your days writing Python, and so you can have AI assistants in this. And the third thing is called function callings. This one's a little bit more subtle. So the idea is that you have some existing software, so some functions, and the generative AI wrapper on this is basically, it's a natural language interface. So rather than having to know the name of the function to call, or in a bit of software, normally you'd have to like point and click on something in order to call this function. Now you can write an English or whatever language, natural language sentence, and the role of GPT here is to convert that sentence into a request to call a function. So if you say, copy this document to this other directory, then GPT is going to know, okay, I must call the copy function. I'm going to give it this file name as an input, and I'm going to give it this directory as an output. So it's just making it easier for less technical people to use software. But code interpreter and function calling are for other webinars. We're going to focus on file search today. All right, so I'm just going to go to the OpenAI website, just so you can see I've got $2.72 credit on my account. I'm a rich man. So if you haven't added a payment method, then go to the payment methods tab. You can add your own credit card. And just make sure you've got a positive number in your balance. We're going to spend a bit more time going through some of the features on the OpenAI developer platform. But for now, I'm going to switch over to our code along test. So make sure you've got a copy of this Data Lab workbook. Let's just bump up the text size one so you can see it. Now, I explained the goal. We're going to create a file search assistant summarizing and explaining archive papers on AGI. I have to say, a few weeks ago, I'd worked a lot with the OpenAI API, but I hadn't actually created an assistant. So in order to figure out how to create this code along, I read a DataCamp tutorial on how to do this and a bit of the OpenAI documentation. And I think in general, if you're stuck with a task where you think, okay, I've not done this before, I don't know how to do it, DataCamp tutorials and reading the documentation are a great way to get you started. Now, another note. A lot of the code that we're writing here in the OpenAI package is tagged as beta. So that means OpenAI considers this code a bit experimental. There are probably going to be some changes over the coming months. That's just the nature of working on the cutting edge, is that things go out of date a little bit quicker. So if you are watching this recording sometime in the future, then just be aware that things are probably going to change. Okay, if I haven't drilled it into it enough already, before you begin, please do set up an OpenAI developer account. All right, so because the OpenAI package updates like on an almost weekly basis, you need to get the latest version. Isn't always going to be a workspace. We're going to make sure we're on the latest version, which is 1.33. So if you run this, it will install the latest version of the package. That's just going to take a few seconds to run. So while that is installing, let's go on to the next task and import the packages that we need. So first of all, we need to import the OS package. Secondly, we need to import the OpenAI package. And thirdly, we need to import the Pandas package. And I'm sure many of you data scientists know that we usually give this the alias PD. So we'll run this cell. Should be. Oh, I'm typing what I'm saying. Okay, that's better. So import OpenAI, not OpenAI package. So that has worked nicely. All right. The next thing is that you need to define what's called the client. You need to say this is it's basically an object that represents a large language model. And the convention for this seems to be to call it a variable named client. And so we're going to take the OpenAI package, and within that, there is an object called, this class called OpenAI, and we need some parentheses here. And then we run this. The object, I'm not printing this because the object isn't very interesting. It's just, it gives us methods to call the large language model. Now, the next thing is that we need to upload the papers. So the papers are contained in your workbook. If I do File and then Show Workbook Files, there is a papers directory. So these are just 10 papers about AGI that I downloaded from archive and put inside the workbook. There's a hidden cell here which gives a bit more information about what is in the what's in the papers. So I'm just going to run this. I think we'll hide the code. The code's not that exciting. You can see, so we've got 10 files, and these are the titles of the papers. So you can see it's all stuff about AGI. The file names for archive are a bit boring, so I'll just numbers instead of something more descriptive. Okay. Oh, by the way, the way I selected these papers, it was just, I went on archive, I searched for AGI, and then I picked things that sounded like they might be a bit interesting. All right, so in order to upload the files, basically you call the open function. So this is the Python function for opening any function. And then the OpenAI package has a .files.create method. And this gives you some details about what was uploaded. The only part from this we need is the file ID. Because this code's like the same every time, I thought there's no point in writing this function myself. I actually just stole this from the DataCamp tutorial. So thank you, Zumana. Zumana's actually a previous webinar guest as well. So in this case, rather than writing this ourselves, we are just going to steal Zumana's code. So the function is going to upload a file for the assistant. So you can see we're calling open file. So it takes the file path that in the papers directory is an input. So it opens the file. We are reading the file, and it's a binary file. So we use this RB notation here. And then we're calling this client.files.create method. And the only other thing to add is the purpose is for an assistant. And then we return the uploaded file identification. All right, so run this to define it. And now we've got a function which we want to apply to every single file name in that data set. So you see, I have this data set here, and the variable name I called it papers. So we're going to take, we're going to start off with papers, and we're going to select the file name column. And then we're going to apply the function upload file for assistant. And then just for convenience, we have to convert this to a list. Let's run this. So this is going to loop over each of the file names and then upload the paper to, oh, that's not good. Oh, whoops. I did not assign a result to that. Let's try that again. All right, so this has uploaded all the papers to the OpenAI platform, and you can see we've got 10 papers. So we've got 10 IDs for each of the files. Now, at this point, let's check that it worked. So if you go to this link, actually, I'm just going to do this within the API itself. So I'm going to go to my dashboard and storage and then files. So you can see that we've got all 10 files uploaded. You can see file size, date it was uploaded. Yeah, so that's all the details. So this is a good way to check it worked. You can use the web application here, the website, just to make sure that your files did actually get uploaded. All right, the next task is to add the files to a vector store. So we've got the files there in as whole chunks, just whole PDFs. When you are trying to get an AI to ask questions about, or when you're trying to ask questions about a document to an AI, you get much better results if you split the documents up into small chunks. So the typical size is like normally 500 characters or so. So it's like just a few sentences, but it depends exactly on your use case. And then you put those in those little chunks of the file into a vector database. So I believe OpenAI uses Pinecone under the hood. So Pinecone is a very popular vector database. And then when you ask questions, it's going to pull those. It's going to find which of those chunks of text are relevant to your questions and pull those out. Now, all this can be a bit faffy, just worrying about how do you split your documents up into specific chunks to get the best results. The Assistance API actually lets you not worry about this, so it can handle it automatically. I think there are ways to tailor it if you want to get better results, but you can just do this automatically and have OpenAI worry about all this for you. So all you have to do is specify the file IDs that you want to add to the vector database. Now, just to note, you do get charged daily for having this vector database on the OpenAI platform. I think by default, it automatically gets deleted after 7 days of not being used. You can change that parameter. So if you want to keep it indefinitely, that's fine. If you want to delete it after 1 day of not using it, that's also fine. If you don't want to get charged, then I suggest deleting this straight after the code long if you don't want to get charged for a week. It's only a few cents, but if you're worried about cost, then make sure to delete it. Now, actually,
Richie, sorry, I'm just going to jump in for 1 second. We've just got a few questions from the audience. I'm just going to hide your screen as well so that
all right, if you hide my screen,
jump in. So first of all, we got a question from Angelica Jelly Spratley. Nice to see you, Jelly. Papers doesn't seem to be stored in the data lab space, so I'm just wondering whether we need to sort anything out there. And we've also got a few people asking how to define the OpenAI API key as an environment variable. This was linked. There are a few images for this in the slides. So if you check the resources link that we've put in there, there's a few ways to do that in the slides. But Richie, if you want to give a quick demo of that as well, then yeah, we can potentially do that for people as well.
All right. So just on this point about papers not being stored in the data lab space, can you just clarify? So if you have a look in the file browser, there should be papers, like a papers folder there. If you don't see that, I have no idea what's gone wrong. It might be worth just trying to take another copy of the workspace. So if you just create a fresh copy, I don't know whether something went wrong originally, but it should be there. And if, oh, hang on, Jelly says, I can see it when I see file workbook files. Yeah, that's just what you want. There should be a, oh, yeah. So if you've got the files there, there's also a papers variable. So that was in a hidden cell. I just expanded that and ran the code to define a data frame. So there's a hidden cell there. If you run that, it will define the papers variable. So the second thing was about how do you define an environment variable? Maybe I'll switch over to the code along again. I'll just show you how to do that. All right, cool. Let me. All right. So if you go to environment and environment variables, and you click add, so it's going to be called OpenAI API key. You give it a name, OpenAI. OpenAI key. So the value for this, you're going to have to go to, let me see. So in platform.openai.com, if you click on settings, and where is it? I think, no? Oh, yeah, you see my phone number there. Okay, user API keys. So go to your profile, user API keys, create new secret key. And then it'll show you, it'll just create one, you just copy the value, and then you're going to paste it in here. I'm just going to cancel that since I've got one already. The other thing is you're going to need to connect it. So once you've got the it listed in the environment variables, if you click on the ... there should be an option to connect. So if we do one that I'm not connected to, you'll see there's a connect option there. All right, super. Were there any other questions to go through before we continue?
We have Sarah, who's in the chat, just asking if part of our code is correct. She's getting an error. It's to do with the actual file name. So I don't know whether you want to switch back and have a quick look at that, as I'm not able to answer that question, unfortunately, Sarah. But maybe we can save that one for the end and keep it moving through for the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Just go back to the thing about papers. So there was a hidden cell, and if you run, yeah. So apologies for hiding that. We do actually need this bit of code. So this is just defining the a data frame. So it's got all the file names and the titles of the paper. So it was the chunk of code that created this table. You need to make sure you've run that in order to have access to the papers variable, which is going to be used for uploading the files here.
Cool.
All right. Super. So the next thing we had to do was to create a vector store. This is when we, as I mentioned, this is where we've got the PDFs, and we're going to split them up into chunks and store them in a vector database. So I've added some code hints for this, so you can see what the standard code pattern for this is. So we're going to copy and paste this, and then we're going to change some of the values to something sensible. So basically, you're calling, so client, that's the OpenAI model. You can see this beta, so this is experimental code. It's about vector stores, and we're calling the create method. So the file IDs we have are in uploaded file IDs. And you're going to give it a sensible name. So let's call it AGI papers. And I'm going to run this. All right, so the results, again, are not particularly exciting. It's mostly just information about it. We're going to need to make use of this ID value later on. Then it's just got information. I'm not sure what this is, probably number of seconds since 1970. Oh, by the way, there are some people who are in my copy of the code along. If you might as well have your own copy. If you click the link in the chat, you can get your own copy of the workbook to follow along. Okay, so what else is there? So it's got a number of files. Hopefully, you can see that there are 10 files in there. And then the rest of the metadata we don't really care about. It's not that exciting. It's just, well, yeah, it's a vector store. Again, if you want to check that this works, we can go back to the website. So we're going to go to dashboard, storage, and vector stores. This takes a moment to load. apparently when I uploaded this early this morning, when I was testing it, I call it Archive AGI Papers. So this is AGI Papers, and it gives you all this sort of information. You can see the ID is the same as what we just saw before. It does charge you 10 cents per gigabyte per day. So this is actually not very expensive at all, given the amount that we've uploaded. And then you can say, when does it expire? This is probably where you want to say, please turn it off after a day if I don't use it. Okay, so we've created the vector store. I'm actually going to get rid of that older version of it. So let's go back to the code. So we've created the vector store. We've checked that it works. The next step is to create an assistant. Now, one of the important parts about creating an assistant is you need a good prompt to describe how it should behave. Now, this is typically like quite long. It's going to be a few paragraphs of text. It's going to tell GPT what its role is, what it should be discussing, how to phrase the responses, things like that. Now, writing a few paragraphs, that should be a good signal to you. That's far too much for a human to do. No one can write that much text. So a really good idea is to use ChatGPT in order to write the prompt for the assistant. So that's what I did here, because I'm incredibly lazy. So, but it's also come up with something a lot better than I think what I could have done. So I wrote this short prompt to ChatGPT about what I'm trying to do, saying I'm going to make an assistant. It's explaining the contents of journal articles about AGI. This is the name. I've called it Aggie for AGI. It's quite nice giving AI assistants human names, although you've got to remember they're not actually human. So this is what it's doing. It's reading papers in PDF form, and it's explaining the contents of to an audience of data scientists. So this is going to tell it how technical it can get when giving responses. And then this is what I want to do, is create an instruction prompt for the assistant. And so it came up with this. It's like a few paragraphs of just, these are all the things you should talk about. And I think that's pretty decent text. So I don't think I edited this very much at all. I just took the output. I read through the output from ChatGPT to make sure it was sensible. It looked sensible. We're going to use this. So run this, and you've got an assistant prompt. Now, we are ready to create the assistant. Again, the code for this, it's a few function arguments. So in order to try and remember what the code pattern is, I've added a code hint. So again, we're going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to edit a few values. So as I mentioned, we're going to call our assistant Aggie the AGI agent. So name is Aggie. The prompt, I think I called the variable assistant prompt. Double that. You can choose the different version of GPT you're using. At this point, you're probably always going to want to use GPT-4o. There are occasional uses of GPT 3.5. It's a little bit cheaper. So if you're doing something that's not very sophisticated at all, like something very simple, like trying to classify text, then GPT 3.5 is probably enough for you. But in general, for assistants, you probably want GPT 4o. Now, the last two arguments for this function are a little bit more interesting. So you can also specify the tools, and you basically got a choice of file search, code interpreter, and I can't remember the other ones. Oh, function calling. So you specify which of these three things you need. So because you can have up to three of them, we've got a list, and then within that, it's a dictionary, and the key is type, and the name is, and the value is file search. So this is one of my gripes with software developers writing code, is they really love their nested, well, it's JavaScript developers really, they really love their nested objects. So you find lots of lists of dictionaries of things whenever JavaScript developers are trying to write Python. Okay, so the other thing is the tool resources. So the file search tool needs to be accessed to vector store, and so we need to give it the vector store IDs, and those are in the vStore object that we created, and it's the ID element. So maybe if I just scroll back so you can see where that was. So we created this vStore object, and then there was this ID. So that tells us which vector store to use. All right, so let's run this. Okay, and again, the result, it's a lot of gumph. We've got an ID, which is going to be incredibly important again. We've got when it was created, and then you've got the instructions. So that's the prompt that we gave it. And then the other information that we passed it about which tools are allowed and which tool resources are allowed. So it's basically just parroting back all the information that we fed into it. And now we have an assistant. So we can, it's in fact ready to use. So we're in the dashboard. If you go to assistants, and there you can see Aggie is available to chat with us, and it's got the instructions. So this is what we told it. This is what we said it was doing. And then this is the model it's using. These are the tools it's got access to. And yeah, there's a few other bits and pieces and settings around it. So yeah, if you want, you can say hi to Aggie. I don't know whether it's going to give any interesting information back. Okay, so Aggie's very polite. Says, "How can I assist you? Do you want to do anything? Do you want to tell you anything about AGI?" Pretty decent response. At this point in general, I feel like you can just use this point and click interface. So if you want to have a chat with Aggie and get some useful information, then you're probably going to want to stick to this this web interface. The reason we're doing things in code is that, well, actually there's two reasons. So the first reason is because you get charged for having that vector store every day. Probably when you've finished using the assistant, it's going to be cheaper. If it's only something you use very occasionally, you're going to want to delete it as soon as you're done, and then you can just run your code and have everything uploaded again. So it's just a case of click run in Data Lab, and you've got a new version of the assistant there. You don't need to worry about like paying for storage when you're not using it. The second reason is that if you're creating lots of assistants, then you're probably going to want to be able to just tweak your existing code for how to create an assistant and then just run things. So if you're creating lots of assistants regularly, it's much easier to do this in code and then just tweak things and run rather than having to go into the web interface and point and click and do things like that. And I suppose thirdly, if your AI assistant is integrated into some other piece of software, so if you are doing a customer service chatbot, it's going to want to integrate with like the rest of your customer service website. So plenty of reasons to use code. Fast reproducibility and fast creating of stuff is the main benefit of code over the interface. But once you're actually using it, I would say probably this web interface is going to be better than code. However, in the interests of learning how to create a conversation and have a conversation using code, we are going to continue. So we've just got a couple more tasks. And how are we doing for time? 35 minutes. Okay, 35 minutes. Right. So let's move on to the next step. So in order to have a conversation with the assistant, we're going to have to create a conversation thread object. And it's very simple. You just call this function. Now, OpenAI used the term thread, but I feel like conversation is easier to remember. So I'm going to call the variable conversation. Thread makes it sound like you're creating clothes or something. Again, it's mostly just parroting back information that we sent to it. The important thing is going to be this ID object. Next, you're going to add a message to the conversation. Oh, I've got a double A there. That reads like Dutch or something. But anyway, apologies for the typo. So we're going to add a message to the conversation. And again, it's a fairly straightforward code pattern. You're going to be using a variation on this bit of code over and over again, which is why I've provided this little template for you. So we're going to copy and paste. And I want this to be good. We're going to ask about what is artificial general intelligence. It feels like a good question to start asking. So let's copy this text. So actually, it's interesting. Whenever people talk about AGI, a lot of the arguments seem to happen because there's no standard definition of this. In fact, so one of the papers in here talks about there being like 9 different definitions of AGI that are commonly accepted. So this is why we have arguments, because we can't agree on definitions of anything. But the important thing is, so we're using the client object. So this is the OpenAI model. It's beta. So yeah, probably the code's going to change in the future. Threads, because that's what we're working with at the moment. Threads is the conversation. And then we're going to create a message. So we're adding it to this particular conversation. It's a user message, which means this is something created by a human and it's designed to be part of the conversation. And this is what we're asking. So let's run this. Again, the thing that gets returned, we've got an ID object, an ID value, and then most of it's just sort of parroting back things that we passed in. And now we are ready to run the assistant. Now, in order to make this work inside a notebook, we need something called an event handler. And that's going to make it print the responses in the notebook. Now, this is fairly tricky code. I'd look at this and I'm like, I'm not sure what it's doing. So I've copied this directly from the OpenAI assistance documentation. The idea behind an event handler is that if something happens, for example, a user clicks on something or a user types something, whenever that event happens, like the click or the typing, you do something. That's all an event handler means. It's just saying, okay, something happened. I will do something else now. So I can talk you through this very briefly. As you can see, it's a lot of print statements. So it's just about saying, okay, if the assistant does something, then put this little assistant prompt, then type the rest of the text. And then some stuff about the code interpreter that we don't need. So it's basically just a way of saying, okay, there is some text coming from the LLM, send it to the Jupyter notebook. There's a lot of code for, for that. But anyway, all you need to do is just run this and it will work. Right, so we're finally ready to run stuff. We're doing a slightly fancy version where it's going to stream the response. So there's 2 ways of dealing with the text output. So you can either wait until the LLM has generated all of its response and then print that, or like you see in ChatGPT, you can get it to display a few words at a time as it's being generated rather than waiting for everything to be done. So this means that, you've got things to read rather than just sitting around waiting for 20 seconds. So that's called streaming a response. And again, because every time you have this conversation, you're just going to want to run exactly the same code. So we're going to define the function for this. I'm going to talk you through this briefly. So basically, you've got the threads. That's the conversation. And we're running it. and we're running it in a streaming format, it's this conversation, it's this assistant, and there's this event handler code that makes it print nicely. So again, run this code to make it work, to get access. And then in order to run the assistant, all we have to do is call run Aggie with parentheses. All right, here we go. So here you can see what it's doing. So it's calling the file search, and then it gives us a load of output. So here it's saying we've got different definitions of AGI. We've got human level performance, cognitive tasks, flexible and general intelligence. It takes a while, this, because it's reading in it's doing a lot of behind the scenes. So it's taken our question, and then it's trying to find matches within the chunks of PDF documents in the vector store, and then it's pulling those chunks out, trying to create a new response to this based on what those chunks of text are. And what you can see now is a little bit annoying because in the Jupyter Notebook, these links don't actually work, but it is giving us citations within the documents for all the things that it's talking about. It's actually, well, it's a large language model, so it's quite verbose. So it's given us a lot of information about what is AGI. Now, I'll leave you to read this in your own time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add one more, we're going to ask it another question. So we're going to add another message to the conversation, and then we're going to run this again. All right, so we're going to create another user message. And if you don't mind, I'm going to scroll back to where I had my code hint. And when we did this before, I'm just going to change the text. So I'm going to copy this client.beta.threads.messages.create code. And I'm going to paste it in here. So we're going to assign this to message, how close is AGI? So this time, instead of asking what are the most common definitions of AGI, we're going to ask how close are we to developing AGI? So we're going to run this. So it's added another conversation to our thread. Again, you get the message ID back and a bit of gumph. And to run the assistant, it is as simple as calling run Aggie again with parentheses. Now, if anyone gets the answer AGI is here already, then I'm going to be very worried. Hopefully, it's going to tell you that we still have a bit of progress to go before we get to AGI. So you can see each time you want to ask a new question. Actually, I feel like this code could also be wrapped into a function to make it really easy. So we could probably just say pass in some content and then run it again. So you can probably make it very easy just to keep asking questions if you wanted to use this Python interface. But as I say, once you get to the point of asking questions, probably going to the web interface is going to be more fun for you. The value of Python here is really in the fast setup of new assistant. So basically, anytime you have a few documents that you want to work with, you can just run pretty much the same code and just have a new assistant created straight away just by clicking run. All right, with that, I am going to stop sharing and we should go to, actually, before I do that, just to say, we are at the end of this, but if you want to learn more, there are two things on DataCamp that are pretty good for learning more about how to work with this sort of stuff. So we've got an entire skill track. I think it's like 9 courses on developing AI applications, and a lot of this is it's OpenAI focused. And then there's also a series of 9 code alongs. So this sort of Data Lab workbook format. So this takes you through using the OpenAI API, working with Pinecone vector databases and Hugging Face platform, Hugging Face package as well. So definitely more to learn. I hope you've enjoyed this. Because you've now got your assistant, ask it some more questions. Find out what API. Find about AGI. So you've got 10 papers in there. There's a lot you can query in them. Any questions you have about AGI, that's the state-of-the-art research. All those papers are from the last 6 months or so. So yeah, this is cutting-edge stuff. All right. So with that, let's go to audience questions.
Yep. So we've got a couple of questions in from the audience. So one of the ones we got earlier on was, is it possible to write a long prompt and upload it via file? Giselle has had some problems with prompt length before. So yeah, is there any way that we can do that instead? I think you are muted.
Yeah, I was just swallowing my tea. Okay, so yes, you can. I'm trying to think what the use case for this is. So I think that the latest versions of GPT, the prompt length shouldn't be an issue. I can't remember what the token, like you can have pages and pages of prompts now. So it's probably not a huge issue anymore. If you're using GPT 3.5, then you are a bit more limited. But GPT-4o, yeah, the prompt length shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, you can upload prompts as a file. You can upload anything in a file using that same code that we wrote today.
Cool. Next question is from Angel David. He says, can we create the assistant in Spanish?
C. Yes, you can. Yeah, so GPT works pretty well with Spanish. If you're trying to do some obscure or not widely used language, I don't know, you're trying to use like some old old language where there's like not much text around, that's going to be a problem. But for all the kind of modern languages where there are a lot of speakers, yeah, they should be fine.
Brilliant. And now we've got two, I think, semi-related questions. Correct me if I'm wrong when we do get them. But Harsh says, stupid question, how is this different from creating a custom GPT?
It is basically the same.
So we also had a comment from Adriel O'Malley.
Maybe just to add to that. Yeah, here basically you've got fairly fine control over which tools it has access to, and I think the idea around this is that like they're really trying to push you towards integrating this in some other software. As a data scientist, I'm not a software developer. I don't tend to do that. So, but it's basically the same thing as custom GPT. Sorry. Next question.
So yeah, I think you've kind of explained what we were going to cover here. So Adriel says, so the use case of the assistant compared to using GPTs is you can include it on your site and use it as an outward-facing assistant rather than it being a self sort of thing. Cool.
Yeah, it's just a case of where do you want to where do you want your assistant to live, and what else is it going to interact with?
Cool. So yeah, we also had this during the code along itself. So Jelly asked, I'd like to ask, what can you do? So Aggie can give me a guide of what it can do. Is there any way that we can demo that, or should we answer a few more questions first?
I can try asking it. Okay. Let me. Do you want to turn screen share again, and let's try this. All right, so I've just asked, what can you do? Let me bump this.
Fairly open-ended.
Yeah. Ooh. So it's actually pretty, well, it feels accurate. A lot of this seems to be like parroting a bit what was in the prompt and then expanding on it. So that seems useful. And that's actually a great tip. I like that on, yeah, if you find someone else's assistant or custom GPT, say, what can you do? And that's going to give you a user guide.
Cool. Oh, let me just hide that. So next question that we've got is from Joaquin. So he said, will you create a code along where you deep dive into the assistant function calling?
That sounds like a good idea. I need to work out how that works first, but yes, I'll consider it for the roadmap.
Cool. Next one is from Hussein. He says, is the series Become a Generative AI Developer tailored for beginners?
Yeah, great question. So you do need a little bit of Python knowledge, so I would say if you know how to work with dictionaries, you can do a list comprehension, that sort of level of Python. So stuff from the DataCamp Intermediate Python course, maybe a little bit of, I think there's a tiny amount of pandas in there. You don't need advanced Python skills, and you don't need to know very much about AI at all, because that's all taught in the course. So just a little bit of Python just to get you started. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult worrying about the Python code and the concepts at the same time.
Cool. Next question is from David. He says, what concerns are there about data security and privacy when training an assistant on personal and/or sensitive data?
Yeah. So whenever you use the API, the data isn't trained on, so it's not going to be. So one of the big worries with giving all your information to ChatGPT is that OpenAI will use your conversations to train future models. And I don't think it's happened in practice, but theoretically, if you were to put your personal details on there, it gets fed into the training data for a future model, then your personal details could be the output of someone else's conversation. So that's why a lot of companies are very strict about, well, you can't put any corporate information into ChatGPT unless that feature's been turned off. So I think the big concern is you are storing data on a cloud service. So if OpenAI gets hacked, then everything that you've uploaded there, that could then become public. So there have been many cases of companies being hacked, and personal information being revealed to the world. But that's the same with any cloud service.
Yeah. Cool. Next question is from Frank. He said, no, we've answered this already. Why would you want to do this versus create MyGPT? So yeah, so that you can embed it on your website and have a bit more customizability with it. Ben asks, is there a way or need to restrict the data sources that you've uploaded versus general sources that come with GPT-4o?
Yeah, so there's probably a way. I think is the question, do you want to make sure that the information is definitely taken from the sources you provided rather than just things it knows already? Okay, so you might need to do a little bit of tweaking the prompt just to say, I will only consider information that is in the uploaded files. If the information isn't contained there, then I will just say I don't know the answer. So that you probably, in the assistant instructions, in that assistant prompt, you probably have to tweak it just to say, okay, just tell me about what's in the files, not what you know in general.
Cool. That's it for audience questions. So I'll hand back over to you. If you have any other questions, let us know in the comments and we will get back to you. But yeah, for the moment, I'll hand over to you, Richie, to close out the session today.
All right. So just a couple of notices before we sign off. So tomorrow we got a session on tomorrow we've got a session on data governance with Azure. So particularly for those of you who are interested in data security, data privacy, or in general working in the cloud, please do come along to that. And then on June 26th, June 27th, if you haven't signed up already, we've got the Radar virtual conference all about AI. It's going to be huge. I think we've got more than 20,000 people signed up already. So it's going to be a big event. We've got a lot of top speakers, ton of CEOs, ton of people from AI startups. We've got a ton of people from big companies and government just talking about all things AI. I am very, very hyped for this event. It's going to be amazing. If you have not registered yet, please do. Otherwise, you're missing out. It's going to be 2 days of constant insights. I'm looking forward to it. So I hope to see you all tomorrow or for future webinars, and I hope to see you all at Radar with that